And we welcome Brandon Boyd to noise11.com. Really looking forward to seeing you down in Australia in April, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me. We are absolutely thrilled to be back in Australia.
And those top 5 songs that you do, Drive, Wish You Were Here, Pardon Me, Nice to Know, they sound like songs that you play every single time.
We usually do play those songs. We get stuff thrown at us if we don't.
Yeah.
You bring all of those sort of things into consideration when you write a set. And as a result, our set lists do have a bunch of the songs that have been big singles for us, but then they also are peppered with deep album cuts, some covers, some pieces of other people's songs, pieces of our songs, weird moments of improvisation. They're sort of, they're kind of all over the place in a fun way.
Nice to Know You often opens shows, Drive often closes show. A couple of great bookends there. Did those songs just evolve into that position?
Very much so. Yeah. When we wrote those songs, we wrote them at different periods of time, those two in particular, but we had no idea that they would be well received or become popular in any way. So there's like a feeling, you know, when you're playing music, there's a feeling as to what should start a set, and there's a feeling as to what should end the set. And that's, you know, that's a little nebulous, but I will say though that when we don't play Drive last, or near to last, we've noticed that that's a song people want to hear in a way that is unique. So we have to kind of hold it back a little bit, I feel like, if I'm just being honest. But we love playing it. It's a lot of fun, and we find ways of tweaking the arrangement here and there, keep it, you know, true to form and keep the essence of it intact. But, you know, we also have to keep things interesting for each other and ourselves as well.
Those early 90s when the band started must have been exciting times. Rock was accelerating and reinventing at that time. You know, we hadn't seen that since the late 60s and 70s, how fast it was accelerating at that point. A new band such as Incubus coming along, finding your sound and sticking to that sound must have been a chore to negotiate. Who were you using as your markers?
I wouldn't so much describe it as a chore, but there definitely was some navigating that was taking place. We were really inspired by, there's too many artists to list. You know, a list in its entirety would take too long, but that, you know, put it this way, we were 15 years old when we started our band. It was 1991. And some of the albums that inspired us to pick up instruments were bands like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, PJ Harvey. We were listening to like Fish. We were listening to the Grateful Dead. We were listening to some like punk and hardcore melodic punk bands like Firehose. We were listening to The Police. We were all over the place, but it was all kind of like under this sort of larger banner of rock music, you know. And so Jose and Mike and I, you know, we started the band together when we were kids. We grew up together, and so we were going to all these shows together. And by the time we actually started playing music together, it didn't seem, none of us were surprised. It was the next logical step in our friendship. It's like, we've been doing these things together. We've been loving the same bands and turning each other on to different bands. Let's have our own band and see what that sounds like. So we, I think, sounded like a mishmash of all of those bands I mentioned for our first few years. And by the time we were like late teenagers, we'd been a band for 4 or 5 years. We started to kind of stumble into what could be described as our sound. And we really didn't land on what became, I think, more of a signature identity in our aesthetic until like 1998, 1999. So we've been a band for just under 10 years. by the time we really started to find our voice. And for me in particular, I really started to learn how to sing by about 1998, but we had already put out albums, you know what I mean? So we did a lot of learning on the job.
Yeah, because I guess Fungus Among Us, 1995, SCIENCE, a couple of years later, did not indicate that this was about to become one of the biggest bands in the world, did it?
No, we were kind of still very, and those two records you mentioned in particular were still very much, it was before we learned how to filter our influences. We were just channeling our influences. It was just all kind of pouring through us. And so those records are this crazy mashup of all of those bands I mentioned, and us doing our best impressions of those bands, which I think is, in fact, I know is how we learn. Human beings, we learn through imitation. And then eventually we start to seek out to be innovative. And that's what we ultimately wanted to do, and ultimately want to do, is to find new territory, undiscovered places in music and in art. And so that's what has kept this interesting for so long, is that all of us are different enough as musicians and as artists that we keep kind of surprising each other over all these years. Somebody will bring an idea in where it's sort of like, I did not see that coming. This is really weird and cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but I'm going to do something with it. And then, a song like Aqueous Transmission from Morning View happens, or any other song from another record. It's like it's still a little bit all over the place, and that's one of the things I love about this band, is that there are no real aesthetic guardrails. We're allowed to kind of go wherever we want, which is fun.
Because I guess Morning View was recorded by 25-year-old Brandon, and then Morning View 23 by mid-40s Brandon.
48-year Brandon, yeah.
How was the more mature Brandon looking back at those songs?
It was a really interesting creative exercise to re-record this record, because obviously there's 23 years of growth and traveling and touring, thousands of shows played. The natural kind of aging process takes place. So there was a feeling at first, and only at first, there was a feeling where it was like, wow, I was really going for it when I was 25. Like, I did not think I would be singing these songs when I was 48 years old, let alone trying to recreate them. So I was just in the moment, as we hope to be when we're making music. But then I started to kind of like just accept that my voice is not a 25-year-old's voice. It's a 48-year-old's voice. And the good news is that I still care about my instrument and the craft of making music. And so I put my heart and my soul into this project, as did everybody in the band. And I'm really delighted with how this re-record turned out. It sounds different than the original Morning View, but why wouldn't it? You know what I mean? I think we agreed, if there was an ethos going into this new project, it was, we're not trying to make the same record again. We're just taking a look at it 23 years later and seeing what it looks like. And what you hear is that the result is what you hear. And we're really proud of it. And I'm excited for people to listen to it for sure.
We're about to have the 50-year-old Brandon. It's not too far away. When I think of when you were born, 1976, you think about a 50-year-old in 1976 was born in 1926.
That's a way of putting it into perspective.
Sorry to freak you out there.
No, I love it. I honestly, I have, there's a sense, and maybe you could speak to this. I don't know how old you are, but there's a sense of relief that comes along with being in your mid to late 40s, where you're sort of like, you've let go of the idea of your younger self, and you're interested and curious about who this second half of your life self is going to be. And I'm excited about that. If art has taught me anything, it's that the more present I am, the better the art is. And so there's a spiritual lesson in there for me that bleeds into my life. It's like the more present I am in my life, whatever age I am, whatever location I'm in, the better version of myself that I'm able to put forward. And so I love being 48, and I'm sure I'll love being 50 too. The one thing I could do without is the classic sort of late 40s thing where it's like, how are you? I'm good. My back kind of hurts, you know, but like a little, like the minor aches here and there. I could do without that stuff, but it's fine. We learn, we do yoga, and we stretch, and we go for walks and stuff.
Well, you use the term art in relation to your music, but your art is also as a painter as well. Do you see a commonality between the creativity of the two?
Very much so. And I'm fascinated by it. I can't help but see art and visual art and music as two branches that have grown off the same tree. And what's exciting about that to me is that what tree has only two branches? There's music, there's art, there's film, there's photography, there's sculpture, there's dance, there's acting. There's like this tree is just sort of this, it's this ever growing, ever sort of splintering thing that I'm having the greatest time climbing. Yeah, I'm excited for everything that's coming down the pike. Incubus is writing a new record. I just did an art show here in the States in Dallas with my paintings, and so I launched a fine arts print company called Moonlight Arts Collective, where I've been seeking out and finding other sort of multidisciplinary artists, musicians, actors, athletes, photographers who we know from their day job. Like in my instance, it's like, oh, you know, that's the guy that sings in the band Incubus. It's like, and there's the painting universe. And there's the aspect. So I've been finding all these other musicians, great musicians. Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo is an amazing painter. Melissa Villasenor, who is a comedian, and she was on SNL for I think like 10 years, is an amazing illustrator. All these different people who like moonlight as artists when they're not at their day job. That's another project of mine. So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I guess, you know, the two worlds come together in your 3 published books when you combine words with the artwork.
Yeah, in a manner of speaking, they do. There's another branch on the tree, publishing. Yeah, it's a big world, and there's so much space to navigate, and I see it as just a delightful adventure. And so I'm very, very hopeful about not only the present, but about the future as well.
Only 2 solo albums so far, The Wild Trapeze 2010, Echoes and Cocoons 2022. You get to experiment further when you do your solo work, and is that experimentation, when it works, something that you can bring back to the band?
Yes. There was another record too. I did a project called Sons of the Sea, which I wrote and recorded with the producer Brendan O'Brien. That came out in 2013. I count that as a solo record as well, though it was written with a creative partner. But yeah, those exercises in doing solo works have been hugely informative to my process with Incubus. I think that any experience within the band, but also outside the band creatively, ends up ultimately informing the mothership. I refer to Incubus as the mothership, or if this, you know, big sort of creative life was the house, Incubus to me is the kitchen. It's the place that we always sort of go back to and congregate and share stories, and then do our best to make delicious meals to share with everybody. I just had another wonderful experience with an American prog rock instrumental band called Night Verses. They just put out their record a week ago, but the single that I sang on just as a guest vocalist is called Glitching Prisms, and it came out about 2 weeks ago. It was really, really fun working with these guys. They're a 3-piece, but it sounds like there's 15 people making music with the three of them. They're wild musicians. Like it's very, very sort of prog metal kind of stuff. But it was a really fun invitation that I could not turn down. Like we talked about possibly doing something together, and we talked about it a couple of years ago, and then it finally came to fruition. Yeah, that kind of stuff ultimately does inform anything and everything Incubus does.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you back down in Australia. Brandon, thanks for the last 50 years of creativity. I'm looking forward to the next 50 years of creativity.
Thank you.
And some great shows in Australia in April.
We're so excited to come down. Thanks for your time, man.